Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. Here I'm in London, and behind me is the Royal Courts of Justice, which is a huge complex of buildings. It's neo-Gothic, so it dates from the 1880s, and it houses many courtrooms in the civil division. That's to say non-criminal, so it'll be about family law, commercial law, contract, tort, media law, on and on and on. You know, a lot of famous libel cases have been heard there, as in Hamilton and Fayed, things like that. So I'm filming from the rear of the building, Carey Street. Why am I showing the arse end of the building? Because the other side, on a street called the Strand, is very noisy. The Strand's called that, as in beach, because the Thames used to come right up to there. Till the 1860s, Bazalgette made it its own appointed limits keep with the embankment. Anyhow, it is open to the public. There's a principle of open justice, and so you can go in and watch cases even if you're not involved in the case. Now, if it's a case which excites very great public interest, there might be ticketed admission, which is still gratis, but those who have some connection to the case, a friend or a relative of those involved, will be guaranteed seats. Others members of the public are not. It's very unusual for a case to be heard in camera, which is to say, where the public are excluded, just the judge, the lawyers, witnesses. If it was something touching national security, that would be what it's like. So it's right beside Lincoln's Inn, which is one of the inns of courts. There are 4 inns of courts. So there's a divided legal profession in England and Wales, as well as in most Commonwealth countries. Nobody's a lawyer as such. He or she is either a solicitor or a barrister. So barristers have to belong to chambers. Barristers are what's the word? Usually self-employed. They hire themselves out by the hour. Now there are a few barristers in-house, and then they work full-time for a bank, an insurance company, even the government legal service. So this is what it's like. So on that Inn of Court, Lincoln's Inn, there are dozens of chambers. The chambers is a barrister's office, and the barristers, they share costs of the building, of the clerks. Clerks are like secretaries. For some reason, they still use that slightly old-fashioned word, clerk. Now, clerks are mostly male, which is, it's odd because they're doing secretarial work, and people who do that are usually women. There are women who are clerks, and each chambers will have a head clerk who's quite well paid. So there's more of the inns of court. So you don't see many people because they mostly go in the other side, and often see a media scrum on the other side when there's a famous case is over and the claimant and the defendant and the barristers are coming out. People are not allowed to film inside there. They're not allowed to sound record, even draw a picture inside or use a mobile phone inside. That would be contempt of court. They'll be sent down to the cells until they've purged their contempt, which is to say come up and apologised. What else about the Royal Courts of Justice? The proceedings are recorded, sound recorded, just to double check the stenographer got it right, and then that's wiped after a while. But anyone who goes in there is not allowed to do so. It's a very big deal. Doesn't quite make sense to me that we don't allow it. Like other countries allow court cases to be filmed, to be broadcast even. If we really believe in justice, why don't we do that? Say, oh, we'll turn it into much of a media circus and it'll be trial by television. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. The same argument was advanced about Parliament until, I think, 1988. They were allowed to sound record it. It was on the radio. They weren't allowed to film it. And there was a time they weren't even allowed to sound record it. You go back to the 18th century, they weren't even allowed to print the debates in the newspaper, the actual content verbatim. Obviously that changed. So this notion that somehow the public knowing what's going on, seeing what's going on, is bad, I think is bunkum. There we are. And there's obviously a crossover between politics and the law, and which profession do most politicians do? By far the most common profession for a politician is to be a lawyer, either a barrister or a solicitor. Barristers are advocating in court a bit more, so they're more into public speaking, concerned with public issues. So that's giving you a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of the Royal Courts of Justice. So you get some idea of the scale of this complex of buildings. What else would I point out? There's a royal coat of arms up in every courtroom. So they'll sort of be a bit like airport-style security going in there to see not bringing in a bomb or weapons and things like that. What else should I point out? Well, judges have their offices in there and things like that. Some of the judges are in the inns of courts, such as Lincoln's Inn. Some of them even live up there. So we're about to see some barristers, see what they're wearing. They're not wearing their wigs right now, unfortunately. So your dark suit and the white, well, almost tie sort of thing, whether a man or a woman. So men have to wear trousers, women can wear trousers or a skirt. So those horsehair wigs, both men and women have to wear them. And you're not allowed to have any hair coming out at the front. If you have long hair, as either a woman or indeed a man, it has to come out, you can come out the back, down the back. So that's that. Judges wear other sorts of wigs. Now, if there's a case involving a child, the judge may say you will appear unrobed. No, it doesn't mean nude. That would mean wearing an ordinary suit without the gown, without the wig, without that white shirt with the strange tie thing hanging down, because appearing in court is a daunting experience for a child at the best of times. But if people are wearing these bizarre anachronistic garments, that might be even more off-putting, so they shan't wear that old-fashioned apparel in that case. Obviously, so sometimes when child witnesses can give evidence by video link from elsewhere to make it less intimidating for them. So what can I say? There are about 10,000 barristers in England and Wales. So you've got plenty of time in London as a tourist. It's well worth coming in, going into a court and watching the case. You can just stay for a few minutes, you can stay for a whole day. Obviously these cases can take months. So courts are only open Monday to Friday, and they're not open on public holidays. So that's not surprising. Courts have terms. Now, if it's a really urgent case, they will sometimes meet on a public holiday or even a weekend, but that's highly unusual. And they even have holidays, as it were, like in August in particular, and when very few things are going on. So, as I say, only if it's a pressing matter that needs to be decided pronto will they meet at those times. But that doesn't mean the barristers are necessarily on holiday here preparing and meeting their clients. They call it a conference when they're meeting a client. Even if it's just meeting one person, the word is quite unusual, conference. Well, perhaps that's enough from the Royal Court of Justice, and we see the barrister coming along with us. I don't know if that's a solicitor, perhaps a clerk. So barristers have to be pupils for a while, which is, say, an assistant to someone who's already an established barrister. And they are paid for that since the 90s. Prior to that, they were paid diddly squat for being a pupil. You go back long enough ago, and they even had to pay to be a pupil. So if someone didn't come from an affluent family, they could forget it. But even today, it's a bit difficult, because imagine a young person graduating £50,000 in debt after a bachelor's degree, contemplating getting a further £50,000 in debt to be a barrister, with no guarantee of a job at the end of it. They can be called to the bar and never get a brief, never make a penny. So it's a difficult career structure. So after, let's say, an ordinary degree and anything, go on to do the graduate diploma in law for 1 year, and that costs at least £12,000, fees alone. And then after that, be called to do the bar professional training course, and that costs something like £18,000 1 year. Providing you do well in that, then try and get pupillage, which is to be an assistant to a barrister. So have 2 pupil masters and 2 sixes, as you know, with one of them for 6 months and the other one for 6 months. And at the end of each 6 month, a pupil master will sign off the pupil's certificate of competence, which is, they almost always sign it. So the pupillage is a really difficult thing to get. It's hugely oversubscribed. There's a real bottleneck. About 4 times as many people apply for them as get them. And there's a limit of a number of applications you can do. You can only something like 12 per year. And so you might apply and get none in a year, do something else to make money, being a paralegal or whatever, which is poorly paid, and then try another year, apply for another 12 pupillages, still not get one, and eventually you're going to give up. But anyway, having completed your pupillage successfully, try and get tenancy, which is a permanent place in chambers, which is again very tricky to get. They're hugely oversubscribed. But people who successfully complete pupillage, they usually do get a tenancy, not necessarily a well-paid one. So there are barristers make over £3 million a year, but that's a tiny, tiny number. Obviously, if you're making even a tenth of that, you're doing well. But there are barristers who make very little, and I've heard some barristers say they reckon others make a loss. So that's that. I think even a barrister who's mediocre would be making £100,000 a year at the peak of their career. But you consider just how clever these people are, their grueling education, and they've had to go through the stress that it might not pan out for them at all. So it's about the unwisest investment a person can possibly make of that time and money. Oddly, there are 2 professions which are mutually exclusive in this country. The only 2 are barrister and solicitor. You can be a barrister, you can be a solicitor. You are not allowed to be both at the same time. Oddly, a person is permitted to be a dentist and a barrister at the same time. Someone's allowed to be an accountant and a solicitor at the same time. You could be a barrister and a doctor. You can belong to any two professions or more than two professions, but you are not allowed to be both a barrister and a solicitor at the same time. I don't see any good reason why. You're allowed to switch from one to the other. It takes 4 days of exams to change profession. And sometimes barristers become solicitors because the bar is just not panning out for them. They're making no money at all. Because it's very stimulating, it's very prestigious. You can see why it would appeal to a lot of people who are gifted in the humanities. But they are not guaranteed an income. That's why I say it's a very risky thing to do. Very alluring though. I fantasize about it myself.